As shots echo through the streets, people run for cover. The gunfire broke out close to their homes. The army had to evacuate civilians from their own four walls. At this school, teachers scrambled to get the children inside. The children were outside during recess. We moved them immediately to safe places, down to lower levels. Then we waited for parents to pick up their children. Of course, the children were panicked and afraid. They cried and screamed. According to the military, the shooting began in a Christian neighborhood of Beirut and escalated into an exchange of gunfire. It lasted for hours. Several explosions were also heard in the city. The gunfire started during a rally organized by Hezbollah and its allies. Hundreds of people were protesting against the investigation into last year's massive explosion at the port in Beirut. The presiding judge had summoned powerful politicians. While some people praise his actions as courageous, the protesters accuse him of bias and want to see him removed. Aside from these latest tensions, Beirut is already suffering. Lebanon is in a deep economic crisis and on the verge of financial collapse.
Latest news surrounding Lebanon. Hezbollah accuses Lebanese forces of killing its supporters. Lebanon tensions test Hezbollah al-Noon alliance. Hezbollah chiefs claims militant group has over 100,000 trained fighters. Al Jazeera headline. Hezbollah accuses Lebanese forces of killing its supporters. Hezbollah's leader has accused the Lebanese Forces Party of shooting at their supporters and killing 7 people last Thursday near a protest against the judge investigating the Beirut port explosion. Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah said in a televised address on Monday that the Christian Party and its leader Samir Geagea are trying to start conflict in the country. The real program of the Lebanese Forces Party is civil war, Nasrallah said. He also went on to say they don't have a problem with causing events that lead to bloodshed, even if it will lead to a large-scale military confrontation of civil war. Nasrallah said that Hezbollah's armed wing has over 100,000 fighters, armed, trained, and experienced. Unidentified gunmen fired at hundreds of Hezbollah and Amal supporters last Thursday at a protest by the Beirut Justice Palace, leading to hours-long clashes. It killed at least 7 combatants and civilians and wounded more than 30 others. Lebanese Forces leader Samir Geagea, longtime adversaries of the Iran-backed party, repeatedly denied the accusations of organizing an attack. Nasrallah dismissed accusations that armed members of Hezbollah and its ally Amal were at protests before the clashes. We didn't carry weapons or take any security measures, and let the security agencies handle it because it was in a sensitive area, he said. Protesters demanded the removal of Judge Tarek Bitar from the Beirut port blast probe and accused him of being biased and politically motivated. The Lebanese army has so far arrested 20 people in their investigation into the clashes and have received a video that shows a soldier shooting and killing an unarmed protester. More than 200 people were killed and some 6,500 wounded when hundreds of tons of highly explosive ammonium nitrate fertilizer stored in Beirut port for years ignited on August 4, 2020. The blast destroyed several neighborhoods in the Lebanese capital. No officials have been convicted yet. Judge Bitar has charged and pursued senior political and security officials. He has charged former Prime Minister Hassan Diab, former ministers Ali Hassan Khalil, Ghazi Zaiter, Nahoud Mahmoud, and Youssef Fenanios with criminal negligence. Nasrallah insists Bitar should instead focus on the judicial issues that permitted the ship carrying the explosive ammonium nitrate to dock at the Beirut port and again accused him of not being impartial. Nasrallah went on to say, there are embassies, references, and there is politics involved. Reuters headline, Lebanon tensions test Hezbollah al-Noon alliance, dated October 18, 2021. Worsening sectarian tensions in Lebanon are testing an alliance between Shiite Hezbollah and its Christian ally, President Michel Aoun, who may lose ground to their rivals as they step up opposition to the Iranian-backed group's influence. Analysts believe divisions that have deepened since an outbreak of violence in Beirut last week may play to the political advantage of Aoun's longtime Christian adversary, Samir Geagea, a Hezbollah opponent with close Saudi ties. The alliance between the heavily armed Hezbollah and Aoun has been a defining feature of Lebanese politics since 2006. Hezbollah helped Aoun become president in 2016, while Aoun has provided important Christian backing for the armed status of the group, which is more powerful than the Lebanese army. The strains have been growing, specifically over Hezbollah's opposition to the investigation into who was to blame for last year's catastrophic explosion at the Beirut port, which, while killing many Muslims, did most of its damage in Christian parts of the city. The dilemma facing Aoun sharpened last week when tensions over the investigation ignited Beirut's deadliest street violence in years, reviving memories of the 1975 to 1990 civil war. All of the 7 dead were Shiites killed in what Hezbollah has called an ambush by the Lebanese Forces, a Christian party led by Geagea. The Lebanese Forces denied this, blames the other side of provoking trouble by sending supporters into the Christian neighborhoods of Ain al-Remenah, where it says 4 residents were wounded before a shot was even fired. Violence began as supporters of Hezbollah and its Shiite ally Amal began gathering for a protest to demand the removal of Judge Tarek Bitar, who was investigating the blast. Today, you have Christians rejecting these scenes of getting back to Civil War memories, and at the same time not happy with the way Shia are expressing their opposition to the Judge Bitar process, said a source familiar with thinking in the Free Patriotic Movement, the party founded by Aoun. The Free Party movement and Hezbollah has not decided to part ways, but the course of events was separating them, the source said. Free Party movement officials did not immediately respond to a request for comment. In his first speech since the violence, Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah said the Lebanese Forces saw itself as the protector of Christian blood, but Hezbollah was no enemy of Christians. Nasrallah went on to say the Labor LF had opposed the party's understanding with the Free Party movement when it concluded in 2006 because it did not want Christians and Muslims to open up to each other. There was no Lebanese Forces response to Nasrallah's remarks. It wasn't the Lebanese Forces that defended the area. All the people, Ain al-Remenah, did that, Geagea said in an interview late on Friday. The view that Ain al-Remenah was attacked was widely shared among Christians, said Mohammed Haj Ali of the Carnegie Middle East Center. There is some kind of agreement among Christians on supporting the port blast investigation and the right to self-defense, and that Hezbollah and Amal attacked the area before they were attacked themselves, he went on to say. Geagea so far seems to have gained some popularity among the Christians. Nabil Boumassef, deputy chief of Amnahar newspaper, said the Free Party movement had made a mistake by accusing Geagea of the violence, and he enjoyed wide sympathy among Christians. I see the Free Party movement as the biggest loser, he told Reuters. The army initially said gunfire had targeted protesters, but later stated there had been an altercation and exchange of fire while protesters were on their way to the demonstration. Soldiers suspected of firing towards protesters under investigation. In addition to the port blast, Aoud's presidency has been overshadowed by a massive financial meltdown that has plunged more than 3/4 of the population into poverty. Gebran Bassil, Free Party movement head, and Aoun's son-in-law revisited the arguments for the alliance with Hezbollah in a speech on Saturday, including its fight against jihadists at the Syrian border. He appeared to side with Hezbollah in implying that the Lebanese forces were to blame for the violence, and echoed some of Hezbollah's criticism at the probe. But Bassil said it was still not clear that Bitar himself was politicized. The investigation should continue. He also went on to say, we will confront those who try to obstruct the file. France 24. Headliner, Lebanon's Hezbollah chief claims militant group has 100,000 trained fighters, dated October 18, 2021. The leader of Lebanon's Iran-backed Shiite group Hezbollah said on Monday that last week's Beirut violence, in which 7 Shiite Muslims were shot dead, was a dangerous development that marked a new phase in the country's internal politics. In his first remarks since the worst street violence in over a decade, Nasrallah lashed out at the Christian Lebanese Forces, repeating accusations that they were responsible for the killings on Thursday. The real agenda of the Lebanese Forces is civil war, he said in a live televised speech. Who are you to try to get into a civil war? Who are you trying to drag it to civil strife with 100,000, he said, directing his comments at Geagea, who accused of having a militia. Heavy gunfire erupted at Beirut's southern suburb of Dahia, a Hezbollah stronghold, to celebrate the start of Nasrallah's speech, which came amid tensions over the investigation of last year's port explosion. Nasrallah went on to say the biggest threat to the Christian presence in Lebanon is the Lebanese Forces Party and its head. The bloodshed, which stirred memories of the Civil War in 1975, had added fears for the stability of the country, which is under an economic meltdown. Nasrallah said some of them may have shouted provocative slogans as they approached the Christian area, and that it was wrong that the gunfire started and people were killed, in which Nasrallah stated, I advised the Lebanese Forces Party to give up the idea of internal strife and civil war. You are wrong, 100%. Your calculations are wrong. The region has never seen Hezbollah as strong as it is now. Despite his tough stand, Nasrallah dedicated a significant part of his speech to trying to reassure Lebanon's Christians, saying Hezbollah was protecting their rights and is allied with the largest Christian party, the Free Patriotic Movement. Lebanon's Shiite Amal movement, a Hezbollah ally, said earlier that the Beirut violence was intended to reignite internal strife and threaten peace. The 7 victims were killed as crowds headed for a demonstration called by Amal and Hezbollah to protest against Bitar. Amal, which is led by Lebanese Parliament Speaker Nabih Berri, one of the most powerful political figures in the country with a nefarious history, urged the authorities to arrest all those responsible for the violence. But the story will continue, and so will the strife. You have to wonder, with the Saudi-backed government led by the right-wing Christian political movement against the Shiites who are currently fighting against the jihadists in Syria, which are being backed by the Saudi Gulf, United States CIA, will continue on into the country that threatens not just peace between the Christians and the Hezbollah Amal organizations, but also, is this also a covert operation run by the Israeli intelligence services to upend the group that embarrassed them in 2006, Hezbollah? These are just mainly theories, not statements of facts, but we have to look at all the avenues. Because where there's civil turmoil and civil war, there's usually a hidden agenda behind it all.